Hey Jude, it's Mark here. I hope you're well and good. Just want to record a very quick video this morning, Saturday morning here in the UK. And it's about this continuing teaching on interracial marriage, which isn't even a thing. You don't even see that mentioned in scripture. And I've dealt with this scripturally a few times now, but I wanted to read something that I came across. So I'm still researching elements of this because this really needs to be undone and taught against because it keeps getting pushed and people keep falling for it. Now, I've mentioned in videos a few months back that, I've perceived that it's a sort of a white North Germanic kind of teaching and, that it's predominant in the southern USA. And I came across part of an article which really just confirmed that for me. And I'll send the link here. And I mean, again, I don't refer to this as authoritative like I do scripture, but it just simply underpins what I already had discerned. So it's a section entitled Baptist Segregation. And it reads as follows, this particular paragraph. The split between the Northern and Southern Baptist organisations arose over doctrinal issues pertaining to slavery and the education of slaves. At the time of the split, the Southern Baptist group used the curse of Cain as a justification for slavery. Some 19th and 20th century Baptist ministers in the southern United States taught the belief that there were two separate heavens, one for blacks and one for whites. Southern Baptists have either taught or practiced various forms of racial segregation well into the mid to late 20th century, though members of all races were accepted at worship services. In 1995, the Southern Baptist Convention officially denounced racism and apologised for its past defence of slavery. This whole issue of racial segregation is pushed and promoted by teachers that are in that particular region of the USA. You'll see pockets of it around Europe and other areas of the world now, because this is where it comes from. And it's a historical thing off the back of slavery, and that's where it's come from. And you can see it here when you talk about it. It's about racial segregation, but we'll have them in our services and everything. And this is why Asians are not mentioned as part of this whole thing. Now, something that I'm going to spend a little bit of time on is the curse of Cain, and also a bit of talking about Ham, because these are things that do need to be discussed to make sure that this whole teaching is properly undone. You also need to remember that slavery, the word slave in any variant, I think it appears 3 times in the entirety of Scripture. And that just, describes something that was happening at that particular time. It's not a doctrine that's ever promoted. How could it be within Christianity? So you find that this whole racial segregation thing is embedded in history. It's restricted to a particular location and time, and it's historically based. So these people that are teaching this, and you find that these teachers and preachers come from places like Pennsylvania, Florida, these southern US states, the so-called Bible Belt. And the sad thing is there are a lot of great Bible-believing assemblies in that area, but it's spoiled by quite a lot of these Southern Baptists and that push this particular thing, amongst other things as well. You've got your your snake charmers or whatever it is there. You've got a lot of strange stuff going on, and this is part of this. So again, there's this historical context, which I discerned a few months back, and I'd mentioned this. The more I was looking at where this was coming from, the more I was seeing where it was coming from. And it was definitely the southern US, among white preachers and pastors, so-called preachers and pastors, that are pushing this, and they don't even themselves understand why they do it. It's all this historical, geographical context, because it's not in Scripture, and it's really that simple. A cursory read of Scripture proves it's not in there. And yet, again, they'll say, all races were accepted at worship service. That's why you hear these teachers say, I love my black brothers and sisters in the Lord. No, you don't. That's a bold-faced lie. And again, it also explains why they just never mention Asians. Have you ever noticed that whenever people talk about this teaching? When you kind of uncover that this is what they're pushing, they try and add it in as a sort of side issue, but it's never mentioned. It's always between whites and blacks, and it's always being pushed by whites. You may see the odd black, again, quote, preacher or pastor pushing something similar, but it's all historical, it's all geographical. As you move away from that area in the southern US, it's no longer, you don't find it. And I wonder why. See? So just a small paragraph, a small article. I'll put the link in the video. Go and have a look and read it for yourself. And go and look at racial segregation in the US. Go and look at how it was connected to the so-called Southern Baptists. You know, there's a lot wrong with a lot of that stuff down there. And again, I mean, it goes back to the point that, you know, I just stay away from these organized religious systems. And I'm sure there's a lot of great Christian brothers and sisters in there. But I stay away from denominations, 1 Corinthians chapter 1. I stay away from organized religious systems. You see, safer that way. You don't get messed up in all of this nonsense. And the teachers that push this on YouTube, and there's one particular person who keeps pushing this, is in deep, dire heresy. And they're teaching falsely. It's vile, it's disgusting, and it's shameful. And I pray constantly that this person repents of this and, you know, fixes it. But it's hard to see that happening. It's hard to see anybody that's pushing this, you know, to be able to come back from it. There's a couple of people that I've interacted with that have thankfully taken a look, for example, at my study on kindreds that I did. Quite a long study, but it needed to be. And have turned, you know, their belief on this particular vile doctrine back to where it should be, which is that there isn't such a doctrine about this, you know, and they saw that for themselves. So you can get people out of this, but it's particularly hard for teachers and so-called preachers and pastors, because they've often built up a ministry with this as one of the foundations, and you take that away, you know, and then they just come crumbling down, which in my opinion is good, because they should do. They're pushing this and finding or trying to find scripture that supports this teaching. I mean, it should make you wonder what else they're finding scripture to push and teach. You know, it's why I always push this back to the scripture. I mean, this is what I mean. The reason I'm talking about this is because this isn't a scriptural issue. The reason I'm linking this into this video is because this isn't a scriptural issue. It's a cultural, geographical, historical issue. That's all it is. And so when you try and shoehorn that into the Christian faith, there's going to be problems. And there are, and I've seen it so many times. So, you know, take a look at this. And I encourage you to do just a little bit of side research on this. It's really sad. It's just sad to see that there's something like this, where this has come from, has infiltrated its way into so-called Bible-believing Christianity, King James Bible-believing Christianity of all things. And that this is somehow a thing. It's shocking, absolutely shocking. So just thought I'd record that quickly. Would be interested in your comments. Feel free to drop an email if you like, BibleBelieverUK@gmail.com. Thank you for watching. God bless and Godspeed.